Ladies and gentlemen, a potentially big bad news is coming that is going to be quite earth-shaking for the oil market and the stock market as well. So let's just watch on to the end. And as I give you the latest update, these are my usual disclaimers, not financial advice. And remember, hit subscribe because these are developing news. And let's go. So the Iranian parliament has voted to close the Straits of Hormuz after the US attacked and bombed their nuclear facilities. So following the US strike on Iranian nuclear facilities on Saturday, the Iranian parliament has voted in support of closing the Straits of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical oil transit choke point, according to media reports. That means it's already passed. Any decision on retaliation, however, will rest on the country's Supreme National Security Council and the leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The parliament vote merely advised him of the option to pursue. So it is not done deal, but is coming. So Newsweek has reached out to White House for email for comment, but so far I'll let you know the reaction of the Americans. So the Iranian has always warned that they can shut down the Straits of Hormuz, and they try to hold it as a last resort for escalation. Now, closing the straits means it's impossible to navigate, with Iranian Navy possibly just putting the warships there or laying sea mines to deter ships, or the military will possibly fire at approaching tankers and things like that. The parliament has reached a conclusion that the Straits of Hormuz should be closed, but the final decision lies with the Ayatollah. So at this point of time right now, there are close to 50 large oil tankers scrambling to leave the Straits of Hormuz right now. Looks like the oil industry is expecting the straits to be blockaded in the coming days. So this is a bad news. So the commander of the IRG, Iranian Revolutionary Guards Navy, Commodore Tangsiri, says that the Straits of Hormuz will be closed within a few hours. So a few hours, right? Now, actually, to be frank, a few hours have passed already. I'm surprised they haven't closed it yet. Maybe again, right? This is this Pahang, but hard to say. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Iran, to a large extent, UAE as well, crude roughly equates to 30% of the world's traded oil, as well as oil products, liquefied natural gas cargoes, equals to 20% of the LNG primarily from Qatar, and 1/3 of the world's liquefied petroleum shipment pass through the straits daily. That means quite a lot of energy products pass through these straits. And if these straits is closed down, then it will have a big issue. Well, I did some research, and most of the analysts actually say that, first of all, closing is quite unlikely, but if it close, it generally will not last. So for starters, doing so, that means closing the straits, would invite a near immediate naval response and air response from the US, with Donald Trump unlikely to sit back and do nothing, because this one hurts the American interests, because oil prices shoot up. This would leave Iran's own coastline and all its ports vulnerable to a vastly superior American air and naval strike arsenal, and they are already there. Okay, the US Navy is already there, ready to strike. So secondly, the move itself, if you close down the straits, will be self-defeating for Iran, because it will impact the country's own oil export first. So it exports about 1.6 billion BPD of crude oil and gas products. So 90% of Iran's sanction-ridden discounted energy export go to China. So China is almost the sole buyer of Iranian oil. So if more than half of it goes through the straits, whether Iran or not, also hits to China. So if you close down, you hurt yourself first, and then of course you hurt your largest customer. So it's in that sense, it is unlikely. A potential naval shutdown would be very difficult to maintain under the pressure from Beijing, the main taker of Iranian crude. So third, such an event were to happen, okay, however temporary it is, will lose its potency partially, because key exporters, Saudi Arabia, UAE, now have pipelines that they can fall back to. So these pipelines are already supplying oil to the rest of the world. I suppose some of it can be diverted to the pipeline as well. So all things considered, Iran has been threatening to shut the Straits of Hormuz for years, but has never attempted to do so or done so. So it's a scare tactic. It's just like I can use nuclear, but I never used it before, right? Just like Russia, it does that a lot. So the oil price could spike, today. But later I'll show you right now, okay, how the oil price has gone up. But this is, as I said, a parliamentary vote is purely advisory. So the crude oil WTI has gone up by about $1.40 so far. And it's not that serious, right? So it's at $75. Now, $75 is not low, but it's not that kind of big jump of $5 to $10 that the market are talking about. So is largely because the whole market is now predicting that the market, the Iranians will not shut the straits down because the consequences for them is going to be quite a lot. But we'll watch and see whether this thing will continue. So early moves since we contained with the dollar only getting a minor safe haven bid. No panic selling across the market. Oil prices are about maximum 2% and so on. So things seems to be okay right now. In fact, I think the whole world is brushing off this news by Iran. But if they actually execute it, then that's a different matter. Right? If they close the straits right now, wow, this would be quite serious. Okay, so they played down the long-term disruption to shipping, pointing out that most of Iran's oil exports to China pass through the Straits of Hormuz. But if the oil prices go up to $130, that will exceed the level reached in the aftermath of Russia invasion of Ukraine. And then that will be an Armageddon for the world's economy. Now, US urged China to dissuade Iran from closing the Straits of Hormuz. So the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, called on China to encourage Iran not to shut down the Straits of Hormuz after they struck the airstrike. It's funny, right? You slap people and expect people, not to react. And then when people want to react, you're going to tell the friend of your enemy that, please tell him not to hurt me. I think a bit LC, a bit low class. So Marco Rubio said that I encourage the Chinese government in Beijing to call them about that because they heavily depend on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil. If they do that, it will be a terrible mistake. It's economic suicide for them if they do it, as if the Iranians don't know. And we'll retain options to deal with that, but other countries should also look at that as well. It will hurt other countries' economy a lot worse than ours. So this would be a major, major escalation. The Chinese embassy so far has not reacted. So now this is also another bad news. President Putin's aide affirms global support of Iran by saying this, that Russia is ready to supply Iran with nuclear warheads. Now that's quite serious, right? So the escalation right now has gone to a level where Russia is like itching to get in. So the US and Russia are now put into once a Israel-Iran war, and that's something that we've always don't want to happen, right? If it happens, then that's bad. This will be a replay of the 1987 Yom Kippur War. The deputy chairman of Russia Security Council said that several countries are ready to give Tehran their nuclear warheads, and that's very bad. This is what Dmitry Medvedev says. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. That will be quite a big provocation against the Israelis and the US because they went out so much effort to destroy the nuclear capability of Iran. Now, Donald Trump, upon hearing this, actually says that, okay, well, the Russian should first take care of their own conflict, right? So he basically Uncle C, there's basically tell them, you take care of other people's problem. So Putin's aide actually said that Donald Trump, once hailed as the president of peace, have now pushed the US into another war. The majority of countries around the world oppose the action of Israel and the United States. Well, so we know, right? We know none of these are good guys, right? Russia, US, Israel, Iran, depending on where you come from, all bad, right? All bad. So after the US strike, Iranian's foreign minister confirms meeting with Putin tomorrow and says that there will be serious consultation with the Russian president. So I think the meeting is probably happening or already happened. We shall see what does it mean to Iran in terms of help from the Russian. So key takeaway from this all is number one, I would suggest that we all wait and see. There's no need overreact. My suspicion is that Iran don't have the guts to close the straits. Right? Closing the straits is like inviting the world military to descend upon Iran. Right? Iran is not going to commit political suicide. But if they do, then God help us, because that kind of outcome will be very bad. This is a developing news. Remember, hit subscribe as I update you all closely and carefully. Okay, so I'll see you. Okay, good night.